Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 304 to 306 based on novel. So let's start. My sword path is only SOSO. Qin Mu looked at the sword skill that was clashing with the knife light in the fog and he revealed a smile. I only have 2 moves in my sword path, so it's probably lousy. His focus was absorbed by Chua's sword skills. Chua's sword skills had originated from him. He exchanged sword skills with the brother and sister of Bai family 40,000 years ago, in High Emperor's 100 Prosperities city. However, it was only for a brief 2 to 4 hours. The brother and sister of Bai family didn't learn much and afterward, disaster broke out. 100 Prosperities city was invaded and they started to escape in the darkness. When the sun rose, they embraced each other in front of a cliff and parted ways. Chua brought the remaining people to survive, and her sword skills had originated from Qin Mu's sword skills. She didn't continue forward on the path of Eternal Peace Empire's sword skills and instead, she paved out her own path. Chua's sword skills had the spirit of a new lease of life, and the hardships of an undertaking in the end of an era. This was caused by the era she was located in, and those dark years forced her to grow stronger, using her feeble strength to fight for the survival of the remaining survivors. Luo Wushuang's knife skills were proficient in calculation, and the rays of knife light were upright and proper, overwhelming people with huge power. On the other hand, Chua's sword skills break the surface at the weakest points, using terrifying piercing power to break Luo Wushuang's huge power. Both of their knife skills and sword skills had the shadow of Qin Mu's sword skills. Qin Mu's sword skills had huge power, and also intricate calculation. There was also the spirit of piercing through the darkness of an era. Chua received Qin Mu's guidance before, while Luo Wushuang's knife skills that were intricate in calculation was crushed by Qin Mu's sword skills that were intricate in calculation. No matter if it was Chua or Luo Wushuang, both of them were influenced by Qin Mu. However, both of them also had their own paths, and they had already broken out from the breathtaking display Qin Mu had brought them in that dark night 40,000 years ago. Their different personalities and different circumstances resulted in both of them having different success on their respective paths. Scholar sat leisurely on the donkey and moved forward calmly. It's rare that you are humble for once. However, there are simply too many people cultivating sword skills in the world. The numbers far surpass those cultivating knife skills. There is also an extremely high number of people who had achieved great success in sword skills. The number of people who entered the path with the sword isn't little as well. Let's not talk about people who are far away. People that are close by are people like Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Sword God Sumuja. Just in Eternal Peace alone, there are these 2 huge pillars in the sword path. During Founding Emperor period, there are countless people who had great success in the sword path. Your sword skill is indeed difficult to be ranked. Qin Mu sat on the head of the dragon Qilin and he said leisurely, "Brother, I'm saying my sword path is lousy, but I didn't mention my sword skill. In terms of sword skill, if I say I'm number 2, no one would dare to admit they are number 1. He gave a slight smile. Looking back a million years, there are countless people who surpassed me in the sword path, but on sword skills, I'm already standing on the peak. Maybe someone will surpass me in the future, however, there was no one that had surpassed me in the past million years." Scholar was astonished and the donkey under him laughed. "We?" The scholar put down the rod and let the donkey have a bite from the carrot. He said with a smile, "Not even Founding Emperor." That donkey took a bite, and the carrot suddenly screamed miserably. Right afterward, another section of its body grew back and its body was still complete. However, that carrot was still screaming endlessly with a miserable voice. This carrot has turned into a spirit. The water Qin was shocked and he walked forward to examine in detail. Suddenly, that carrot stretched out its arm to punch the water Qin right in the nose, causing his nose to bleed profusely. "The carrot is alive," cried the water Qin. "What are you looking at?" That carrot said angrily, "You will also cry out in pain if you got bitten." "I'm not a carrot, I'm a ginseng." He struggled to get off the rod and cried out, "Let me go. I want to beat this idiot that had insulted me. I'm going to open this rascal's eyes." Qin Mu looked at the carrot, and he was endlessly astonished. He said with a smile, "Not even founding emperor." Scholar's gaze flickered and he said, "I've also cultivated sword skills and there are merely 2 to 3 people that could surpass me from the past to the present. My sword skills have entered the path, and I've deduced my sword path to the 13 writings of the sword path. In terms of sword skills, I admit my attainments aren't weak, as well, so I would very much like to meet the number 1 person in sword skills for 1,000,000 years." He placed down his feathered fan and rod so the carrot stood on the donkey's head. The fishing line coiled around his head, and he jumped to and fro on the donkey's head. He gripped his fists and whirled them around as he called out towards the water Qin. "Come on, let's fight." Scholar's gaze flickered and he said, "You and I shall use vital chi as swords to exchange a few blows. Don't worry, I won't bully you with my cultivation, or use my sword path to pressure you." Qin Mu shook his head and said, "You can execute anything on the donkey's back. I don't feel like bullying you. It's common to see a scholar traveling the world with a sword on his waist, writing poems as he wields his sword and kills people on a donkey. Moreover, you are also on the head of a dragon Qin, you can't execute yourself freely as well." Scholar said with a smile, "Once I execute my first sword move, you will jump down from the head of the dragon Qin. The second sword move will make you move 10 miles away from here. On the third move, you will be 100 miles away. On the fourth move, you will be hiding 1,000 miles away." Qin Mu wore a smile that was yet not a smile on his face. "Please." Vital chi swirled around Scholar's body, and his vital chi transformed into a sword formation instantly. Countless fine swords soared about like raindrops, and mountains could be faintly seen among the sword lights. His sword skill was intricate, and could be compared to village chief's sword picture. There was another kind of marvel. Qin Mu raised his hand and tapped once. A single ray of sword light broke through the air and stabbed into his fine rain and mountains. That ray of sword light was none other than the second form of his calamity sword. The sword light flickered indefinitely, and tore through the rain and mountains in an instant. Scholar's countless sword lights missed, and couldn't block this sword light at all. Scholar was astonished, and when he saw the sword light coming to his chest, he hurriedly jumped down from the back of the donkey. That sword light followed him closely behind like a shadow. He hurriedly executed his second sword skill, and sword lights poured forth like a flood. Even though the sword lights overwhelmed that single sword light like the blue ocean and clearly sky that stretched for 10,000 miles, they still couldn't block down this sword light. Scholar moved back rapidly. He fluttered like a butterfly, and yet he was also like a rabbit sprinting in the wild. His body technique was. Yet that sword light still followed closely behind him. He was unable to avoid it. Scholar's third move was released, and it still couldn't block down this sword light. Raising his head to take a look, he had already escaped over 100 miles away. He continued to move back, and next was the fourth sword skill, which was followed by the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh. Every sword skill was extremely exquisite, and full of transformations that others wouldn't be able to catch. Yet, all of them were unable to block that single sword light. In the blink of an eye, he had already come to 1,000 miles away, and the transformations of his sword skills were already exhausted. He could no longer execute any moves. That single sword light from Qin Mu stabbed onto his chest like lightning and gave off a clinking sound. A glow burst forth from his chest to block this sword down. Scholar's nerves were still shaken, and he swept away the beads of cold sweat on his forehead. He returned back quickly with quick steps, and he still saw Qin Mu sitting on the head of the dragon Qilin, explaining to Celestial Venerable Yu the marvel of his move. This move of mine is called Raising Calamity, and it's also called Sword 19. It's the 19th move of the basic sword skills. Qin Mu said calmly, Sword 19 is too complicated, and if divine arts practitioners are about to learn it, their sword skills will straightaway enter the path. I had encountered West Earth Sword Master Luo Inu, and we deduced that there is still a 19th move, thus, we wanted to compete to see comprehend it first. Looks like I have won. Scholar sat on the donkey's back and said dejectedly, You won. Your sword skills are number 1. I've seen founding emperor's sword skills before and they aren't as superior as yours. In that case, what is raising calamity? Qin Mu explained, all living things in heaven and earth have predestined fate, and in this predestined calamity, one has to give and take when facing the calamity. Raising calamity is first to give before taking. Every step my sword light advance, it's a kind of giving. The reason why you can't touch my sword light just now was because I have given first and take later. If you don't give, you will be killed by my raising calamity. Scholar and Celestial Venerable Yu seem to be thinking. Celestial Venerable Yu has also learned the basic sword skills, and he was personally taught by village chief. However, he had not yet settled down and his foundation wasn't too stable. He also didn't have such dense magic power, so he couldn't learn Sword 18 and Sword 19. Scholar's eyes light up and he asked with a smile, What if I give? Will I be able to break through your Sword 19? How much can you give? Qin Mu used his vital qi to transform into swords, and thousands of flickering swords stabbed towards him. Scholar's hair stood on end and beads of cold sweat were all over his forehead. Just now, Qin Mu had used one sword to force him back 1,000 miles. Now with 1,000 and more swords of raising calamity, it was not only as simple as getting injured to break raising calamity. It was literally sending himself to death. Qin Mu dispersed the sword light and said, Sword 19 is the sword skill that had entered the path. Just now, I had executed chain calamities in my raising calamity sword, and other than that, there was also dozens of other changes. However, it's extremely difficult to cultivate Sword 19. If one manages to cultivate it, they would have entered the sword path. Scholar raised the fishing rod, and he lifted up the carrot that was beating up the water Qilin. He continued to hang it in front of the donkey, and nodded his head. Sword 19 is indeed terrifying, but to be number 1 for the past million years, aren't you being too haughty? I took revenge for someone I admire very much, and I had once used this sword skill to break through the restrictions of an ancient god, severely injuring my enemy. Qin Mu took a glance at Celestial Venerable Yu and said, even though that ancient god was only a projection, her abilities were extraordinary. She was equivalent to being on numinous sky realm, and even she couldn't suppress raising calamity sword. Celestial Venerable Yu was blur, and he didn't know the person Qin Mu admired was him. Scholar paid no attention and said with a smile, only the projection of the ancient god, how strong could it be? As for being as strong as experts on numinous sky realm, that's an exaggeration. Your sword skills being number 1 for 1,000,000 years is still debatable. Qin Mu gave a slight smile and didn't debate with him. That was because it was truly astonishing if he was to say it out. Outsiders would find it hard to believe, however. Neo Sanduo and founding emperor would know that he wasn't lying. They came to where sword god Bai Chua and knife god Luo Wushuang had clashed. There was a jade sea, and in the sea, there were knife lights that were like jade walls and sword lights trained to perfection standing upright on the sea surface. A gentle breeze swept past and suddenly, the light and shadow burst forth. The sword skills and knife skills of these two strong practitioners were still fighting endlessly. However, Bai Chua and Luo Wushuang were both not here anymore. On Jade Sea, there were numerous devil gods and gods among the half-gods, trying to bring numerous younger generations to pass through this area. Everyone was being careful, so they wouldn't touch the knife lights and sword lights left behind by these two people. On the surface of the sea, the knives and swords were like barriers. Sometimes, they were silent and sometimes they would suddenly explode with terrifying power. Divine Knife Luo and High Emperor Sword God have a grudge of life and death. Both of them had fought countless times. Scholar rode the donkey into Jade Sea, and he said to Qin Mu, there was a period of time, Luo Wushuang kept chasing after the remaining survivors of High Emperor, and it was High Emperor Sword God that had stopped him. When it came to founding Emperor era, they were still fighting, but outsiders just didn't know about it. Celestial Venerable Yu asked curiously, what about High Emperor Overlord Body? Why didn't High Emperor Overlord Body reappear? Scholar revealed a blank look, and he shook his head. High Emperor Overlord Body had only appeared in the moment of crisis, and then he vanished. He had most likely died in the calamity. Not many people know about High Emperor Overlord Body, and I had also only heard rumors. I've heard that first ancestor Human Emperor and Sword God Su had also gone to search ancient ruins to try to find the traces of High Emperor Overlord Body, but to no avail. They only found an ancient stone tablet. This is Jade Sea, so God execution stage should be in front. We have to be careful there. Qin Mu's heart stirred and he asked, Brother knows a lot, so do you know which of the two celestial heavens, during High Emperor era, does this celestial palace belongs to? If I knew about the inside information of High Emperor, I wouldn't have come. Scholar flicked the rod to tease the donkey as he sighed. After the High Emperor era was wiped out, the primordial realm vanished, and only the High Emperor ruins were left. Even if I want to discover the secret of this era, I can't. Even High Emperor Sword God doesn't know much about the High Emperor era, because of her young age. I've once met some remaining survivors of the High Emperor era, but they couldn't say anything clear about that era. The Mother Earth primordial realm appearing is the reason why I've appeared. On the surface of the sea, the fog grew denser, as they came assaulting from all directions. The Jade Sea was shrouded by the fog, and someone could be heard crying out from in front. This is where Mother Earth fell. There is definitely something suspicious now that the fog has suddenly grown denser. Everyone be more careful. That voice came from not far away, and it had to be other gods that had rushed here from the other heavens. Right at this moment, Qin Mu suddenly saw a huge shadow swooping past ahead. What followed next were cries of astonishment and furious shouts. Terrifying waves of divine arts followed closely behind, and then, the knife light and sword light on the sea surface erupted. The dragon Qilin and water Qilin became nervous. Both of them opened their mouth to cough, and the water Qilin coughed up a Qilin bead, which swept the sea water from the surroundings to form a barrier to defend against the impact of the god's divine arts. On the other hand, the dragon Qilin coughed up two beads. One was a fire Qilin bead, and the other was a dragon bead. The water Qilin took a glance at him and thought to himself, this fellow's bloodline isn't as pure as mine, his abilities are inferior. Just as he thought that, he saw qi, blood, and magic power that had gathered in the two beads of the dragon Qilin became berserk. The two beads were 3 yards in radius, and countless divine rays shot out randomly from the beads, freezing the waves of impact around him. The water Qilin was dumbfounded. Those knife lights and sword shadows were the remnants of Luo Wushuang and Bai Chua's divine arts. They were touched by the people in front, and as a result, the sea surface was in chaos. When the wind and waves became calm, it was silent in front. They walked forward carefully, and not long later, they saw numerous people standing on a pillar that was stretched horizontally above the sea. They had strange smiles on their faces and smiled non-stop as they looked at them. The fog spread and their bodies were also hazy. That pillar floated above the water surface, and in front of this pillar were the devil race and the god race. There were also several gods that had tall and sturdy bodies, which gave off intense god might and devil might. There were also some gods and devils that had made a huge circle, and they stared warily at their surroundings. More and more people placed their attention on that pillar floating on the sea surface. Qin Mu got creeped out by these people's smiles, and he got the dragon Qin to stop. Those gods and devils were still smiling at them, and their expressions were unspeakably stiff. "What are they smiling about?" Celestial Venerable Yu asked curiously. Just as his voice landed, those gods and devils floated up with the pillar. They floated into the air and vanished into the fog. Shh. Laughs from those gods and devils came from the fog. It was sometimes left and sometimes right, sometimes front and sometimes back. There are monsters in the sea, work together to fight the enemy. The gods and devils that had formed a circle shouted. Qin Mu looked at Scholar, and Scholar said, "They have many people, and the target is bigger, the monster will definitely attack them. We can take this chance to slip by." Those god and devil experts heard this and started spewing out vulgarities. Scholar rode on the donkey, and rode past them gleefully. Qin Mu got the dragon Qin and the water Qin to follow him closely. He turned back to look, and those gods were still huddled up in a circle and cursing endlessly. Suddenly, a huge shadow flashed by in the fog, and after that shadow flashed by, the sea surface was empty. The 100 gods from earlier suddenly vanished without a trace. Qin Mu shuddered. Just now, there were a few gods among the god race and devil race, yet they had also vanished. He hurriedly instructed Celestial Venerable Yu to stick close to him. He got the dragon Qin and the water Qin to follow the donkey. Giggles came from the surroundings and revolved around them. The fog became even thicker. Divine light concentrated in his eyes and transformed into one galaxy and 7 heavens. Looking around, faces suddenly appeared in front of them. The dragon Qin was most terrified of this, and he almost screamed. The faces appeared from the fog and circled around them. These faces belonged to those gods and devils from earlier. The faces of these gods and devils swirled around them while giving off strange smiles. All kinds of peculiar giggles came from all directions. Suddenly, a pitch-black gate appeared behind him, and the gate opened. Those faces passed through the gate, yet they still danced around them. Qin Mu's heart sank, and he said with a low voice, "They are corpses, they aren't alive." His gate of heaven influence could take away the souls and primordial spirits of other people, yet for these faces to still be fine after passing through the gate of heaven influence, this meant that they had no souls. Scholar took a glance at the gate of heaven influence and said in astonishment, "This gate of yours seems to be extremely profound." He took out a zither and plucked twice conveniently. A dull grunt came from the thick fog, and those faces started to warp. The spinning finally stopped, and countless dazzling rays of light came from the light, as though 2 small suns were born in the fog. The piercing light came over. He, it's actually an expert. A stink came from the vicinity of the sun. Scholar plucked 3 strings and let go. The sound of the zither rang loudly, and the 3 notes formed one line to extinguish both of the suns. Loud splashes of heavy objects hitting the water sounded out. The fog in the surrounding gradually thinned out, and everyone regained their vision. Qin Mu and Celestial Venerable Yu looked around, and they saw a huge tentacle floating on the water surface. On the tentacle were suction cups that were 3 yards in size, and on each suction cup was a god or devil. These gods were gasping heavily for breath, yet they gave off expressions as though they had difficulty breathing. They let out wails, and their faces rapidly shriveled up. Even their corporeal bodies had become thinner and thinner until they became dried corpses. Scholar, who was on the donkey, put his zither somewhere and flicked the carrot. The donkey continued forward while chasing after the carrot. Qin Mu hurriedly followed, and when he came to where the light had vanished, he saw a round head that was like 100-mile-wide island floating on the water surface. The top of the head had been sliced off, and the two eyes in that bare brain seemed to have been sliced apart by some sharp object. There were corpses of gods and devils everywhere, and they hung from the incomparably thick tentacles. Only their empty skins were left. Qin Mu and the rest passed by this behemoth, and he raised his head. They had already come to shore. In front of them was a divine mountain, and there were two baleful auras swirling around the mountain peak. Qin Mu turned back to look, and that creature gradually sank into the sea, vanishing without a trace. This half-god's abilities were extremely powerful, but brother could actually kill him just by plucking a few strings. Your zither notes have entered the path. I wonder what number in the world are you in terms of the zither? Qin Mu asked. Scholar raised his head to look at those two baleful auras and said, my best abilities are the 4 arts, I've put effort into them. My second-rated abilities are weapons. I played around with them until I achieved quite the ability. My best abilities can be ranked number 1 or number 2. As for the second-rated abilities, I have played around with, that's just common. My zither has lost once, I lost to Red Deity Qi Xiaoyu. His face dimmed as he said, that woman's abilities are extraordinary, her attainments in the art of zither even surpassed mine. Qin Mu's heart trembled violently. Red Deity's abilities were extraordinary, and she was a strong Emperor's throne practitioner. Qin Mu had experienced her zither notes before, and back then, when he and Sakura Buddha had escaped from Buddha realm, Red Deity Qi Xiaoyu had sent a tune of the phoenix seeks his mate to pursue them across the worlds. Just the zither notes alone were enough to severely injure Sakura Buddha. This scholar actually fought her using the zither and didn't die. This showed his abilities. Originally, I thought my zither could be number 1, but now that I think about it, my chess should be number 1. The order should go as chess, calligraphy, painting, zither. Scholar rode on the donkey to scale up the divine mountain. He fanned his feather fan and said with a smile, Cult Master Qin, what do you think is the rank of your zither and chess? Qin Mu sighed and said, I have completely no understanding of these two. Scholar said with a smile, I thought great cult master Qin was omnipotent, never would I expect you to have things you don't know as well. Qin Mu took out a brush and said with a smile, since your calligraphy is number 2, can you write a few words for me? Scholar raised the brush. How is that hard? What do you want me to write? Just write Qin Feng Qing. Scholar wrote down Qin Mu's name on the paper, and Qin Mu took over the brush and paper. He examined the words in detail, and his gaze wavered. Where is Carefree Village? Scholar turned back his head and said with a smile, Cult Master's thoughts sure jump here and there. We were clearly talking about the 4 arts. So why have you suddenly started talking about Carefree Village? You puzzle me. You have been to Carefree Village before, and you might have even walked out from there. Qin Mu took out the family register, and flipped to where his name was at. On my father's ship, I've seen your writings. Many of the names on the Qin family register are written by you. And on the last page, my father wrote my name, and his writings are very similar to yours. It's obvious he learned his painting and calligraphy from you and tried to imitate you. You are from Carefree Village. He suddenly became excited. Heavenly Teacher Zishi, where exactly is Carefree Village? Is founding emperor there or not? Why hasn't he shown himself for the past 20,000 years? Scholar was silent, and she suddenly smiled. The descendants of founding emperor are no simple characters. I've indeed written many names in the Qin family register, but I've never written your name. You getting me to write your name was to catch me off guard, but I forgot that I once taught Qin Hanjin calligraphy and painting. She turned her head back to look at Qin Mu with a slightly pitiable gaze. She shook her head. You don't want to go back to Carefree Village, forgo this thought and live well. I've met you, you aren't bad at all, you haven't thrown founding emperor's face. Lu Zheng, let us go. She flicked the carrot, and that donkey suddenly leaped to the peak of the god execution stage. That donkey brayed, and his body trembled into a god with the head of a donkey. With his body full of muscles, he stretched out his 2 hands to grab the 2 baleful auras on the god execution stage. These 2 baleful auras were the god execution mysterious knife of the celestial palace. They got swung around like 2 huge dragons by the donkey, who used them to split apart the mountain. The god execution stage split in half, and fresh blood instantly poured furiously out of the divine mountain. In just a few breaths' time, the god execution stage that was in front had turned into a sea of blood which blocked the way ahead. Qin Fengqing, this isn't someplace you can enter, go back. Scholar's voice came from the front. If you weren't so smart, I could still bring you around for the experience. However, you are too clever, so return home. Qin Mu looked forward, and he saw the blood sea becoming wider and wider. The shattered baleful auras were everywhere on the sea, and they formed strange apparitions of demons and monsters, making it difficult for anyone to cross. Qin Mu also had a god execution mysterious knife, and he knew about the origin of the god execution stage. The god execution stage was an imitation of that god execution stage in the Dragon Hand celestial heavens, which could absorb the qi and blood of gods. As long as anyone got a slight injury on the god execution stage, all of their qi and blood would be seized by the divine knife and the divine mountain. Kai Shi had once said before that the High Emperor era was one of the most brutal. The gods that were sent up to be beheaded were uncountable, and it was clear how terrifying the baleful auras here could be. However, it's not that easy to stop me. Qin Mu stretched his hand into his Dao Tai sack to grab a small case. The small case opened up with a clack. When the small case was opened, the bones and membrane trembled. That jade quality head on Emperor's throne was ineffably excited, and it absorbed the baleful auras on the blood sea. Qin Mu lifted up the small case with his vital qi, and he walked into the sea of blood with the case floating in front of him. Celestial Venerable Yu hurried the water Qilin to follow after Qin Mu only to see Qin Mu's small case absorbing the sea of baleful auras like a whale. Its qi and blood were growing denser and denser. Its membrane was also becoming scarlet red like blood, and the baleful auras in the eyes of the jade head were becoming stronger and stronger. The dragon Qilin's heart was on tenterhooks, as he kept raising his head to examine that small case. The water Qilin whispered, "Brother, why are you looking at this case?" The dragon Qilin shuddered and said, "I'm seeing when this case would be full." You haven't eaten spirit pills, so you don't know the feeling of being full. Once it's full, it wouldn't eat anymore. As he was speaking, he suddenly heard a burp coming from the small case. Clack, the small case suddenly closed. The dragon Qilin felt his blood run cold, and he cried out, "Crap." The baleful auras on the sea surface poured towards him, and countless formation runes appeared around Qin Mu's body. As he was about to execute his teleportation divine art, the baleful auras suddenly calmed down as a voice came from the depths of the sea. "Esteemed guest, Mother Earth has invited you. Please follow me." Part 305. Qin Mu held down the teleportation runes, and looked into the depths of the blood sea. There was an abyss opening up and a woman in emerald green rising up from the blood sea. Both sides of the blood sea merged back behind her. She wore a green-colored dress, and the dress was embroidered with all kinds of leaves. Her hair was coiled up like the horns of a deer, and there was a circular halo behind her head. There was a sapling on her head, and it looks like a seed that had just sprouted out from moisturized land. There were 2 green and tender petals. "Big sister." The teleportation runes around Qin Mu's body moved slowly, but they weren't activated. He asked with a smile, "How do I address Big Sister? What has Mother Earth invited me for?" The woman in the green dress walked towards him and stopped. "My name is Gongsun Yang. I'm a maid of Mother Earth. Mother Earth has instructed me to invite esteemed guest over, but she hasn't told me the reason." "Esteemed guest, please." Qin Mu jumped down from the head of the dragon Qilin, and he signaled for Celestial Venerable Yu to remain on the back of the water Qilin. "Sister Yang, your dress is so pretty." Gongsun Yang was delighted. "Is that true? I sewed this dress painstakingly, it took me quite some effort." Qin Mu followed her forward and said, "I've also heard of the reputation of Mother Earth for quite a long time, but I never had the opportunity to meet her. Sister Yang, how does Mother Earth know about me?" Gongsun Yang led them past the Sea of Blood, and she said, "I'm not sure about that. It might be Goddess of Heavenly Yin who mentioned you when she came to visit Mother Earth." Goddess of Heavenly Yin was assassinated by others during the end period of the Dragon Han era, and Mother Earth was rather uneasy of something similar happening. However, Goddess of Heavenly Yin was revived, and she came to find Mother Earth on her own initiative. I was outside the palace at that time and couldn't hear their conversation. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief. After Goddess of Heavenly Yin had revived, there was indeed a period of time that she wasn't in Heavenly Yin world. Qin Mu had gone to Heavenly Yin world once to find her, but the divine arts practitioners of Heavenly Yin world said she was out visiting an old friend. That old friend should have been Mother Earth. Goddess of Heavenly Yin must have told Mother Earth that I revived her, and she probably has something planned for asking Gongsun Yang to receive me this time. Qin Mu thought until here, and he said with a smile, "Sister Yang, on my way here, I saw numerous gods and devils heading here. There were also many half-gods rushing over here, making this journey rather dangerous. What is happening?" Gongsun Yang brought them to the other shore of the Blood Sea, and they came ashore. However, they didn't head for Jade Capital City. Instead, they walked around it, and Gongsun Yang said, "The Mother Earth Primordial Realm's power is complicated now. Now that the Primordial Realm has reappeared, many powers are stirring, and they want to take advantage of the crisis. These gods and devils are from the many worlds under Mother Earth, and now they have snuck in with ill intentions. As for those half-gods, they aren't summoned over by Mother Earth. Someone faked the name of Mother Earth and summoned them over." Qin Mu's heart jumped, and he cried out, "Someone faked the name of Mother Earth to summon the half-gods over?" The water Qilin was also shocked, and he hurriedly said, "Impossible. After I awakened, I could clearly feel that it was Mother Earth that was calling us. She is the ruler of the primordial realm, so the feeling of her summon can definitely not be wrong. Old brother Dragon Qilin, didn't you sense the call of Mother Earth?" The Dragon Qilin said, "I felt it. However, I was plowing the fields at that time, so I ignored it." Qin Mu pondered and said, "Since it wasn't Mother Earth who summoned the half-gods, who else can fake Mother Earth's name to get the half-gods to come over? What kind of method did that person use to call the half-gods in the primordial realm? To allow everyone to hear that person's call, and not be able to differentiate between real or fake, it shouldn't be simple, right?" Gongsun Yang shook her head. "This isn't something I can know. Ever since Mother Earth died, I've been waiting quietly in the earthly palace for the day she would be revived. I don't know much about the affairs outside. Jade Capital City was extremely huge, and its land was vast. Furthermore, the numinous Sky Hall was right in Jade Capital City. Terrifying waves came from them, and sometimes, powerful divine arts would explode and spread out from the numinous Sky Hall as the center." Qin Mu looked over, and he thought to himself, "The person who faked Mother Earth's name should be in the numinous Sky Hall. I just don't know who it is. Exactly, who is so daring to impersonate Mother Earth, and gather the half-gods for his use. Heavenly Teacher Z, she must have gone there. I wonder if she would be in danger. He then shook his head. Even though Scholar's abilities weren't the highest among the 4 great heavenly teachers, she was the one who had the highest combat power with all of her abilities combined. Even martial arts heavenly teacher had suffered in her hands several times. He accepted the fact that she was able to be ranked in front of him. Martial arts heavenly teacher was in existence on Emperor's throne realm. If even he admitted he was inferior, heavenly teacher Z, she was probably not in any danger. They took a long detour until they came to a small mound. On the small mound was a dilapidated temple, and the horizontal inscribed board stuck in the ground was a few words. Qin Mu pulled out the board, and he wiped the dirt away. The writings were extremely ancient. He looked at Celestial Venerable Yu, and Celestial Venerable Yu said, "Brother, these words read Temple of Mother Earth." Gongsun Yang walked into the dilapidated temple and hurried them. "Come quickly." Qin Mu hesitated for a moment before storing this board in his Dao Tai sack. He thought to himself, "I'll keep it first, maybe it will be useful." They walked into the temple, and the dilapidated temple wasn't huge. However, it was very clean, and it was evident that someone had frequently been cleaning it. There were a few guest rooms at the side with their door closed. "Is that where Big Sister usually stays?" asked Qin Mu. Gongsun Yang nodded her head. "I usually stay here." There are also several fields behind the temple where fruits and vegetables are planted. The fruits that I've planted are very delicious. It's a pity we are in a hurry, and I don't have time to give you a taste. After we meet Mother Earth, I'll pluck some for you." Qin Mu expressed his thanks. This woman seemed to be lovable and simple-minded. She didn't have any schemes, which made Qin Mu find it rather easy to get along with her. Gongsun Yang went into the main hall of the temple. Qin Mu raised his head, and in front of him was the statue of a goddess. The goddess had a look of prosperity, and the corners of her lips were smiling. Behind the god statue was an ancient tree sculpted in bronze. The statue stood under the tree. Gongsun Yang paid her respects to the god statue, and the ground of the temple suddenly opened up to reveal a passage leading underground. Light could be faintly seen coming from the darkness. Qin Mu examined the seal on the ground, and he thought to himself, "This kind of seal is slightly unpolished." Gongsun Yang said with a smile, "You are such a klutzy person, what's nice to look at on the ground? Let's go down." Qin Mu followed her. The dragon Qilin hurriedly moved to Qin Mu's back, and he was inseparable. He looked nervously at his surroundings, and on the other hand, the water Qilin was rather brave. He carried Celestial Venerable Yu, and every step was very stable. Qin Mu only felt that it wasn't steps under his feet. Instead, it was an incomparably thick route. This route was even thicker than the roads leading from Eternal Peace to West Earth. The route was covered with moss, and as they walked on the route, a footprint would light up on the soft moss every time they took a step. After moving over a dozen steps away, only then did the footprint gradually darken. The dragon Qilin and the water Qilin were both very astonished. They jumped around on the route and left a series of hoof marks. Celestial Venerable Yu also jumped down to play with them in joy. Suddenly, he missed a step and fell off the branch while letting out a mournful shriek. Qin Mu shook his head. One strand of his hair grew as it swooped down against the wind. It coiled tightly around him before pulling him up. Celestial Venerable Yu still hadn't recovered from the shock, and he became much more obedient. The tree roots spread out in all directions, and this underground didn't seem like it was underground. On the contrary, it seemed like an incomparably vast space. However, the surroundings were dark, and Qin Mu couldn't see the layout here. He followed Gongsun Yang down underground, and the route led them to the border of the underground space. But as they headed down, the height of the stone wall made him slightly dumbfounded. They came from one route to another, but they still hadn't reached the bottom. Suddenly, the dragon Qin cried out and hid behind Qin Mu. Qin Mu looked over and saw numerous incomparably ancient roots weaving around each other not far away, forming a knot. In the center of that knot, there was a huge black coffin lying there quietly. Terrifying god might could be faintly felt coming from the stone coffin. And in front of the stone coffin, there were 6 types of stone statues which were Qin, lion, camel, horse, white elephant, and THG. Each of them was in a pair, and 12 stone statues were standing on the root in front of the coffin. The specification of an imperial tomb. Qin Mu's heart trembled slightly. Could it be Mother Earth who is inside this stone coffin? The black stone coffin was 50 yards high, 25 yards wide, and 150 yards long. That is the tomb of a high emperor. Inside is the first high emperor. Gongsun Yang bowed respectfully to the stone coffin and whispered, "First high emperor's temper isn't very good. Let's not disturb him and pass by quietly." The dragon Qin felt a shiver down his spine, and he tucked his huge dragon tail between his legs as he tiptoed forward. He muttered under his breath, "Not a very good temper. Could he still jump out of the coffin?" They passed by the stone coffin, and the stone statues suddenly turned their heads. They stared at them with their solemn and vicious gazes, moving their gazes as their bodies moved. Only when they had left did these stone statues turn their heads back to look at each other. They walked another stretch, and saw another huge stone coffin being coiled by the root. It hung at a place that wasn't touching the sky or the ground. There were also 12 stone statues in front of the stone coffin, and these stone statues had the heads of birds and bodies of humans. There were wings on their backs, and they stood with one leg. Some bird heads were vermilion birds, some were phoenixes, and some were even dragon heads with beaks. Furthermore, some bird heads had a different number of heads. This is the tomb of second high emperor. Gongsun Yang whispered, "He doesn't have a good temper either, lower your voices." Those bird-headed statues stared at all of them as they tiptoed across. Then, they saw the third black stone coffin, and 2 rows of god statues again. Qin Mu couldn't resist asking, "Sister Yang, how many high emperors were there in the high emperor era?" 14. Gongsun Yang suppressed her voice and said, "There are 9 laid to rest here, and the rest died outside. Their corpses got snatched away to be refined into treasures, so they couldn't be retrieved." Qin Mu had a weird expression. After a moment, he tried to ask, "Do all of the high emperors have a bad temper?" "Yep." Gongsun Yang nodded her head. "It's fine if they have a bad temper, even those guardian beasts have a bad temper. They see me as a thief every time I come here." Qin Mu could only continue to tiptoe forward. Finally, they walked past 9 black coffins. The tombs of the high emperors had all been chosen here. The coffins were all coiled by the roots, and they didn't know what kind of tradition it was in the high emperor era. Aren't gods supposed to be immortal? Why did these high emperors pass away? Asked Qin Mu. They got beaten to death. Gongsun Yang whispered, "Lower your voice, they can hear. If they hear you, they will jump out to beat you. Their souls have been seized back from Yudu by Mother Earth, they are locked in the coffin now." Qin Mu felt apprehensive, and he asked with a low voice, "What kind of person could kill the past high emperors? Even Mother Earth was killed, much less them." Gongsun Yang said, "The high emperor era was very chaotic. We are here at Mother Earth's palace." The light in front was dazzling, and a palace was being lifted in the air by roots from all directions. The palace was the one glowing. When they arrived at the front of the palace, only then could they see how vast and majestic it was. The marble pillars of the palace were carved with stone dragons, and there were also stone statues of bird-headed gods. The ridge of the palace also had all kinds of stone statues of various strangely shaped divine beasts. On top of the door was the sculpture of a water dragon, while on the window was the relief sculptures of phoenixes. Qin Mu and Gongsun Yang walked in front, and suddenly they saw those stone dragons actually swirling around. Next, the stone dragons actually transformed into bodies of flesh and blood. Out of the blue, a huge dragon head hung in front of their faces. That was an old dragon that had blurry eyes. His dragon whiskers floated, and he said with a muffled voice, "I smell strangers. They are Mother Earth's guests." Gongsun Yang hurriedly said, "May Dragon King please give way." Flapping sounds suddenly came from the windowsill, as a phoenix flew out to land in front of Qin Mu and the rest. With flames flowing throughout its body, it was numerous yards tall. Folding back its wings, it stared attentively at Qin Mu and the rest. Mother Earth's guests. Could they be spies of Old Man Celestial Emperor? At this moment, a profound consciousness came from the inside of the palace. "His invited by me. Eh? Celestial Venerable you." That consciousness was astonished as though she saw a ghost. Celestial Venerable you was at a loss. Qin Mu gave a slight smile, and had the dragon Qilin and water Qilin remain outside. "Brother, let's go in." Gongsun Yang led the way, while Celestial Venerable Yu followed Qin Mu into this earthly palace in a daze. Outside the hall, the water Qilin lowered his head in fear and didn't dare look at that old dragon. He didn't even dare to raise his head to examine the phoenix. The phoenix stood in front of them and pruned her feathers calmly in the midst of this chaos. The old dragon's body was coiled around the pillar, and he hung his head down to stare at them with his blurred vision, as though he was guarding against thieves. His head was much bigger than the dragon Qilin and the water Qilin's heads combined. The water Qilin's heartbeat became even faster. On the other hand, the dragon Qilin was rummaging around and took out a few spirit pills from somewhere. He asked that old dragon, "Do you eat this?" The water Qilin cried bitterly to himself, yet he saw the old dragon relaxing his body as he came down from the pillar. He transformed into an elder with a dragon head, and took the spirit pills to try one. He praised, "How refreshing. Young one, why haven't you transformed into a human form yet? You are still walking down the path of the primitive half-gods, relying on food to grow. This path has already been proven to not work. Only by transforming into the form of a human can you have divine treasures and celestial palaces, only then can you cultivate." The dragon Qilin sought knowledge earnestly. "Cult Master has taught me the ancestral dragon's supreme mystery technique, and he said that it was a technique on Emperor's throne. However, when I cultivate it, I always feel something is wrong. Cult Master said I have the Qilin bloodline, making the technique not too suitable for me." That old dragon said, "So I see. Dragons are born from dragon veins, and I was also born from a dragon vein. Ancestral Dragon's supreme mystery technique is already the best technique. However, you have the blood of Qilin in your veins, so it's indeed difficult for you to cultivate the ancestral dragon's supreme mystery technique. I don't have the technique of the Qilin race, but there are many Qilins here. We can still find them and ask for some top-notch techniques. Follow me." The dragon Qilin followed him. The water Qilin stared with his eyes wide open. So easygoing. That old dragon led him to the front of an imperial tomb, and he called out loudly, "Guardian Lu, Guardian Lu." A stone Qilin gradually shed off its stone characteristics, and transformed into an awe-inspiring fire Qilin. "Why has Dragon King called me? There's a young one here with the bloodline of my dragon race and your Qilin race. However, he doesn't have cultivation techniques for the Qilin race, you can teach him some." That old dragon said, "I ate his spirit pills, so I have to give him some benefits." That fire Qilin looked at the dragon Qilin and said, "So you are that kid from just now, do you still have spirit pills?" The dragon Qin hurriedly took out some spirit pills and said, I saw brother was rather bold and powerful just now, so I didn't dare to come forward and talk. That fire Qin was quite pleased. We are ordered to guard the imperial tomb, so we naturally have to be more bold and powerful. Suddenly, the Qin in front of the other imperial tombs came to life, and they rode on auspicious clouds to land around the dragon Qin. They were all full of smiles. How fragrant, how fragrant. The dragon Qin took out even more spirit pills to give them. When I passed by here earlier, I almost peed myself when I saw how terrifying big brothers were. Those Qilins seemed to enjoy his praises and laughed. We are there to scare you, this is to prevent any thief from trying to slip in. The dragon Qin took out all of his spirit pills, and even gave some to the old dragon as well. Everyone became brothers with the dragon Qin, and they were very lively. The dragon Qin was rather touched. Luckily, Cult Master created a spirit pill that caters to the taste of both races, because I have the bloodline of the dragon and the Qin. Only because of that am I able to get to know them. Brother, your bloodline consists of both the dragon and the Qin race, now this is a little troublesome. It's no wonder you find it hard to morph. One of the Qin half-gods said, if you cultivate two kinds of techniques at the same time, it's hard for you to train both. Let us change the technique for you. In front of the palace, the water Qin couldn't help being envious when he saw those big shots among the half-gods surrounding the dragon Qin and teaching him how to cultivate. We are both mounts, so why could he manage to mingle into the upper society of the half-gods in an instant while I have to stay here and get stared at by this phoenix? The phoenix continued to stare at him, and she suddenly asked delicately, do you have spirit pills? The water Qin replied honestly, I don't. The phoenix ignored him and continued to stare at him. The water Qin felt sorrowful. When can Master Lan learn how to make spirit pills? The earthly palace was too huge, and some time was required to walk through the gate. This made Qin Mu feel as though he had returned back to the barbaric and wild era of Dragon Han. Celestial Venerable Yu looked at the palace in a daze and muttered, I seem to have come here before, this place seems familiar. Qin Mu slowed down his footsteps and asked in anticipation, could brother have remembered something? Celestial Venerable Yu was more and more at a loss. He knocked on his head and shook his head. I can't remember anything. Big brother, I don't think I'm your biological brother. His face was serious. Qin Mu burst into laughter and said, what are you talking about? Your surname is Lan, and my surname is Qin, of course we aren't biological brothers. He quickly followed after Gongsun Yang and examined the layout of the hall. The decorations in the hall were simple, and no murals could be seen on the walls. There were only some paintings on the flat ground. The primordial spirit behind Qin Mu appeared and looked down from high above. Only then was he able to see the paintings clearly. These paintings were very huge, and one of the paintings was the birth of heaven and earth. One huge tree was planted in the ancient land, and it froze the land, water, fire, and wind that was surging among heaven and earth. Under the tree laid a woman who had woken up from a dream, and beside her was a man stretching out his hand as though he wanted to pull her up. There was a giant formed from light in the sky, and underground, there was a weird man with bull horns and a tiger head. Celestial Venerable Yu's expression dimmed, and he said softly, I knew I was picked up, where are my biological parents? Qin Mu looked at the painting under his feet, and he almost tripped when he heard what Celestial Venerable Yu said. He couldn't help shaking his head. What kind of nonsense is in Celestial Venerable Yu's little brain? He looked at the second painting, and in this painting, the woman and the huge tree were able to support both heaven and earth. The leaves of the tree transformed into worlds of all sizes, and in these worlds, numerous half-gods and ancient gods were living happily. Under the tree, the roots of the huge tree were spreading out on the land, and it formed all kinds of mountain ranges, rivers, and dragon veins of all shapes and sizes. Some of the dragon veins turned into spirits after a long time and transformed into divine dragons. They were in the midst of transformation. Biological parents. At this moment, Mother Earth's consciousness traveled over and asked puzzledly, "Celestial Venerable You, your parents have long passed away. Don't you remember?" Celestial Venerable You was stunned. He turned his head to the side and wiped his tears secretly. Qin Mu couldn't care about the paintings on the ground anymore, and he looked towards the source of the voice. He saw that the consciousness was emitting from light, and that light was different from the light given off by the palace. The light given off by the palace was too bright, but this light was very warm and gentle. It was as if the power of life was contained inside. The light had an ancient consciousness, just like the gleaming reflection of waves in sunlight. In the waves, there was a woman swimming to and fro. On the woman's back, there was a heart that was formed from light that had materialized. On the heart was an iron sword covered in rust. Qin Mu examined it in detail, and he saw the face of the woman clearly. She looked exactly the same at the god statue in the temple. She also had a prosperous look. He even saw numerous blood vessels stretching out from the heart, like the roots of a tree. Could these be the roots in this underground world? That heart is. His heart stirred slightly. That heart in the light was extremely huge. It was as though it was hidden in a vast space. Even though it looked like it was in the hall, it was actually incomparably far. You should be Celestial Venerable You. I can sense my blessing. That woman's heart swam forward and looked at them across the layers of light screens. The ancient consciousness shook slightly, but when it came to the mind of Qin Mu and the rest, it was as loud as a bell. When you opened up the spirit embryo divine treasure, the other ancient gods and I descended. I've also given you my blessing. You have the blessing on your body, so I can't be wrong. However, why don't you remember me or the past? Qin Mu said, Mother Earth, his soul isn't complete, so he has lost his memory. I see. The woman in the light said sorrowfully, when did Celestial Venerable You die? Was he assassinated in that jade pool meeting 1,000,000 years ago? I have heard about the incident regarding Celestial Venerable You, and thus, I went to take a look. Even though the Celestial Venerable You I saw had a magnificent style unmatched in his generation, it wasn't the Celestial Venerable You in my memory. He didn't have the blessing of the gods. Back then, I suspected if that Celestial Venerable You was really the true Celestial Venerable You. Qin Mu said, Celestial Venerable You was indeed assassinated during the Jade Pool meeting. The woman in the light said, so I thought. How did you manage to preserve his body until now and reconstruct his soul? Qin Mu's expression didn't change, and he said with a smile, why does Mother Earth say that? It's not me that preserved his body, it was Elder Messenger of Death who invited me to revive a person, so I revived Celestial Venerable You. The woman looked at him across the light, and she said with a smile, I still thought you were there at the Jade Pool meeting. Qin Mu was astonished, and he burst out in laughter. Mother Earth is joking. The Jade Pool meeting happened 1,000,000 years ago, how could I have been there? That woman said, when Celestial Venerable You was harmed in the Jade Pool meeting, I saw a person, and I felt that his bearing was very similar to yours, but his face was different, that's the reason why I said that. Goddess of Heavenly Yin mentioned you to me, you should know my intention for inviting you over, right? Qin Mu said solemnly, Mother Earth saw how Goddess of Heavenly Yin revived from the dead. So you want me to cast a spell for you to revive you? That woman revealed a smile. Goddess of Heavenly Yin is full of praises for you, and said you are a great wizard that is unparalleled in this world. Qin Mu walked up, and he observed the woman in the light. After a moment, he shook his head and said, Mother Earth, you don't have a corporeal body, so even if I gather your 3 souls back for you, you can't be revived. Where is your corporeal body? That woman in the light said, it got chopped off by those bunch of rebels. This sword in my heart was also the doing of those rebels. Luckily, they underestimated me and don't know how astonishing my life force can be, and as a result, my earth soul was able to escape. However, my other 2 souls got dispersed by them. Don't worry, once you help me gather my other 2 souls, I will have my method to revive. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief and said, if it's just gathering the 2 souls, I can probably still do it even if it's strenuous. However, Mother Earth's cultivation surpasses Goddess of Heavenly Yin. I'm not sure if I can succeed at my current cultivation. He took down the willow leaf on the heart of his brows and gradually executed his magic power to form a gate of heaven influence behind him. Who are the rebels that killed Mother Earth? Why do they have such terrifying powers to murder an existence such as you? The woman in the light gritted her teeth, and hatred poured out from her. Heaven Alliance. Qin Mu's heart twitched violently. The woman in the light had a gaze like lightning, and she looked at him puzzledly. Great wizard, why did your chi and blood suddenly surge violently, and your heart beat faster when you heard Heaven Alliance? Part 306. Qin Mu's heartbeat was furious as though a giant was beating battle drums furiously. His chi and blood were fluctuating violently, and the chi and blood around his body started to flourish. They gave off loud sounds of waves surging. Mother Earth might not know, but this spell of mine needs me to forcefully raise my chi and blood. Only then can the power of my spell be raised to the most optimal state. Qin Mu's body bulged up and became taller and taller. His aura also became stronger and stronger. This spell exhausts the body extremely, and I almost tired myself to death when I tried to revive Goddess of Heavenly Yin. After the incident, Goddess of Heavenly Yin felt guilty, and she gifted me many treasures to make it up to me. The woman in the light understood his intention and said with a smile, don't worry, I won't be any more stingy than Goddess of Heavenly Yin. How much did Goddess of Heavenly Yin give you? I'll give 10 times that amount. Qin Mu was overjoyed and started to execute Soul Guide with all his power. However, he was crying bitterly to himself. He had originally thought that Mother Earth had died in the hands of the extraterritorial celestial heavens, so it was nothing much to revive her. By creating another enemy for the extraterritorial celestial heavens, Eternal Peace could work with Mother Earth, and it would be beneficial to Eternal Peace's current circumstances as well. However, Mother Earth had died in the hands of the Heaven Alliance. The Heaven Alliance was naturally not the Heaven Alliance in Eternal Peace. It was the one Qin Mu had single-handedly created in the Dragon Han era 1,000,000 years ago. When Qin Mu had gone back in time, he had talked about the Heaven Alliance with Celestial Venerable Ling. Back then, there were only 3 people that had joined the Heaven Alliance. It was Qin Mu, founding Emperor, and Celestial Venerable Ling. As for how the Heaven Alliance had developed afterward, Qin Mu didn't know. From the looks of it now, the Heaven Alliance seemed to have lived on through the Dragon Han era, and they weren't wiped out by the extraterritorial celestial heavens for the next few eras. Instead, they grew stronger and stronger until they killed Mother Earth when it came to the High Emperor era. He didn't know why the Heaven Alliance wanted to kill Mother Earth, and he wasn't clear about all of the grudges within. If he were to revive Mother Earth, how would it affect the Heaven Alliance? Was the current Heaven Alliance still the Heaven Alliance he had created back then? Did the Heaven Alliance change in the past 1,000,000 years? Or did it still preserve his first wish when he had founded the Heaven Alliance? The very first wish when he created the Heaven Alliance was to gather all of the talents and righteous people of the lowly race, so they could fight for the power to survive for the human and lowly race. However, even though his wish was good, one would find it easy to forget their initial wish after attaining power. It was easy to become corrupted and change. If the Heaven Alliance didn't become corrupted, Mother Earth deserved to die, and reviving her would just cause the Heaven Alliance's effort to be for naught. It would bring huge troubles to the Heaven Alliance's plans. He was now stuck on the fence. If he didn't revive Mother Earth, he would definitely be killed by Mother Earth. If he revived her, many changes would happen. Soul Guide attracted the shattered particles of Mother Earth's soul, and they were like the finest black sand that came flooding from all parts of the primordial realm. They flowed into the earthly palace and into the light. The woman in the light was very excited, and the light in the sea of light surged forth. She had preserved her earth soul among the three souls. What was shattered was the heaven soul and the life soul. Heaven soul was the light of fetus, earth soul was the bright spirit, and the life soul was the secret spirit. Natural-born sacred gods only had 3 souls and no 7 spirits. Only life forms after the beginning and the half-gods had 7 spirits. Heaven soul was pure yang, which represented Xuandu. Life soul was pure yin, which represented Yudu. Lastly, with its back facing yin and its face facing the yang, Earth soul represented Yuandu. The reason why Mother Earth was able to preserve her Earth soul was still mainly because of her identity. She was Mother Earth, the embodiment of the great Tao of Yuandu. It was incomparably difficult to get rid of her Earth soul. Mother Earth's soul was much stronger than Goddess of Heavenly Yins, and the black soul sand came flooding over majestically. It was expected of an existence that was able to be on equal terms with Heaven Duke and Earth Count. Qin Mu's vital qi hung in the air while his qi and blood surged more and more as though it was a sea that had fallen into a tornado. Xuandu God language and Yudu God language came from his mouth, and all the kinds of ancient languages had deep meanings that were like profound poems from gods and devils. Closing one's eyes to listen to his Tao voice, one would have the feeling of life being born from the creation of heaven and earth, having the preposterous and distort feeling of gods dancing around at the beginning of the world. As expected of great wizard, Mother Earth felt that the shattered pieces of her 3 souls were more and more complete. Those soul particles scattered around in the world were being guided over, and Qin Mu just had to reconstruct her heaven soul and life soul. Once her 3 souls were complete, she could rely on her strong life force to revive. Qin Mu chanted non-stop and suddenly, a soft crack rang out. The woman in the light, Celestial Venerable Yu, and Gongsun Yang hurriedly turned to take a look, only to see the skin of Qin Mu splitting apart continuously. Blood flowed out continuously, and they got vaporized by the violent vital qi, turning into a bloody fog that swirled furiously around him. The 3 of them were shocked. This divine art of Qin Mu's was indeed very exhausting, so much so that even his corporeal body couldn't take it. "I am too strong. Reviving me is countless times harder than reviving Goddess of Heavenly Yin." The woman in the light was feeling nervous. With this kind of intensity, I wonder how much longer he can last. Can he reconstruct my 2 souls? Qin Mu's state was extremely bad, and it was becoming worse and worse. The surface of his body seemed to be pierced by countless grains of sand, and blood was floating out of all his orifices. Especially the blood from his nose, which would spew out several yards in tempo to his heartbeat. Celestial Venerable Yu hurriedly said, "Brother, stop. If you continue, all your blood will be gone." Qin Mu ignored him and continued to focus on executing the spell. Gongsun Yang finally couldn't bear to watch any longer and said loudly, "Mother Earth, his cultivation isn't enough, let him rest." The woman in the light was endlessly anxious and said, "Wait a while more, wait a while more. He's a divine arts practitioner, after all, he has strong cultivation and a lot of blood in his body. His qi and blood are still vigorous, he can last a while more." Gongsun Yang hesitated and didn't say anything. She paced back and forth anxiously. Qin Mu had already started to rotate the gate of heaven influence to steal Heaven Duke's power. He was ready to construct the heaven soul when a beam of heavenly light came shining from the gate. Qin Mu's body suddenly froze, and he collapsed face down. He fainted. Celestial Venerable Yu instantly panicked and rushed over. Qin Mu's nose was still spewing blood, but the fountain of blood was gradually shortening. After trying his best to spew out 2 small fountains, it still finally stopped. Celestial Venerable Yu hurriedly went to check for his breath when another 2 small fountains spewed out from Qin Mu's nose again, scaring him. He was delighted. My brother is still alive. Gongsun Yang also went forward to check for the beating of Qin Mu's heart. She felt that his heartbeat was weak, and he lacked both qi and blood. His life was dangling on a line, and he was in an extremely precarious state. Gongsun Yang gritted her teeth, and that tiny green sapling in the light behind her head flew out to land in the heart of Qin Mu's brows. Light flowed and entered Qin Mu's body to extend his life. After a moment, Qin Mu's breath gradually stabilized. However, that small sapling seemed to become listless. The only 2 leaves fused back together and it shrunk. Gongsun Yang's face was slightly pale. She took back the small sapling and continued to nourish it in the light. Qin Mu's spell was broken, and the gate of heaven influence was dispersed. Heaven Duke's power instantly vanished, and heavenly light no longer shone down. The woman in the light hurriedly restrained his soul particles, and she felt her heaven soul recovering partially. However, it was still far from being complete, and she sighed in pity. Qin Mu gradually woke up, and he stood up under Celestial Venerable Yu's support. He coughed up the blood in his throat, and his breath was weak. I'm okay, I'm fine. I can still continue to cast the spell. Great Wizard doesn't have to be too anxious. The woman in the light said gently, you have overexerted yourself when casting the spell just now, and as a result, it has surpassed the limits of your body. Now that your qi and blood are emptied, if you continue casting, you will die from exhaustion. If you died from exhaustion, where am I going to find another Great Wizard that could revive me? I can wait. Great Wizard can just relax and nurse your injuries. She said with a smile, I see Great Wizard's cultivation is already at the peak of the celestial being realm. Any step forward and you will be able to open up Yudu and enter the life and death realm. I reckon Great Wizard will be able to cast your spell freely when you reach the life and death realm. You can reconstruct my soul then. Qin Mu suddenly coughed violently, and he gasped for breaths. He said sorrowfully, Junio's dumb, and I don't know how long will I take to cultivate to the life and death realm. Now that I'm severely exhausted, I'm afraid I'll let Mother Earth down. The woman in the light said with a smile, as Mother Earth, Yuanju is the source of life. Your qi and blood being exhausted is nothing to me. Since you are helping me to reconstruct my 2 souls, I can't shortchange you. From the light, a fruit that was already shriveled up flew to Qin Mu's face. This fruit was like a tangerine dried in the sun. There was no moisture at all, and it was wrinkly. The woman in the light said, this is a fruit born from the divine tree behind my back. Even though it has already withered, the power inside is still like an ocean. Save it first, don't try to eat it, slowly use your vital qi to digest it. This will help you raise your cultivation realm even faster, so that you can open up the life and death divine treasure. The power inside the fruit is too powerful, you won't be able to take it if you eat it directly. Qin Mu's body swayed as he struggled to give his thanks. The woman in the light waved her hand and said, I'm only giving you this treasure, because you are saving me. If you were useless to me, I wouldn't even look at you. Great Wizard, go and rest first. Come and cast your spell again once you cultivate the life and death divine treasure. In the light, an arc ray flew over and landed behind Qin Mu's head to transform into a halo. That shriveled up fruit landed in the halo. I once blessed a few people out of the 7 celestial venerables, and I still haven't blessed you. This blessing is for you to have continuous good fortune, to never age, and to never die. The woman in the light said with a smile, with my blessing, it will be easier for you to digest this fruit. Qin Mu felt pure waves of energy flooding into his divine treasures, and his qi and blood gradually recovered. He hurriedly gave his thanks. Yang, send great wizard to rest, don't neglect my guest. Gongsun Yang acknowledged and escorted Qin Mu and Celestial Venerable Yu out. This celestial palace was too huge, and they had to walk a long time before getting out of the palace. Coming out of the palace, the water Qilin came up to greet Qin Mu only to be shocked when he saw him covered in bloodstains. Celestial Venerable Yu hurriedly asked, Shui, where's Fatty Dragon? The water Qilin was full of envy as he said, he went to mingle with the Qilins and the dragon. Qin Mu said weakly, my body is weak now, so I can't call him, which one of you is going to get him? The water Qilin was about to shout for the dragon Qilin when Gongsun Yang hurriedly said, be careful of alarming those high emperors in those coffins. Let us walk over and call him back. Celestial Venerable Yu supported Qin Mu and placed him on the back of the water Qilin. The water Qilin thought to himself, why does the dragon Qilin's master look like he had his vitality plucked from him over 1,000 times? How did he become so weak? They walked out, and that phoenix suddenly transformed into a woman with phoenix eyes. She followed behind them. Qin Mu took a glance at her and asked weakly, Big sister, why are you following us? That phoenix said without any expression, Mother Earth's orders, she wanted me to ensure your safety. Qin Mu gave his thanks and asked, does Big sister eat spirit pills? I'll make some for Big sister once my body is better. The eyes of that phoenix lit up, and she smiled. You are much more sensible than this water beast here. The water Qilin grunted, and he grumbled to himself, blaming Celestial Venerable Yu for not knowing how to make pills. That phoenix asked casually, you guys are planning to go out? Qin Mu said carefully, the yin aura in this earthly palace is too strong, there are too many emperors' corpses here. My body is too weak now, so I need to recuperate outside. The phoenix said, you can go out, but not too far. Qin Mu's brain started to operate, and he thought to himself, I wonder what the cultivation of this sister phoenix is. If her cultivation is too high and I can't poison her, I will be in trouble. How do I leave this place? He coughed repeatedly and suddenly asked, there are so many gods outsides, and there's even someone impersonating Mother Earth. How is Sister Phoenix's cultivation? Are you a match for those bad guys? That phoenix said, I'm already on the numinous sky realm, I'm not afraid of those scum. However, Mother Earth said to let those fellows do as they please first, and that she will settle everything once she's revived. Qin Mu's expression dimmed. Her cultivation is so high, I probably can't poison her to death. If Grandpa Apothecary was around, that would be good. The water Qilin brought Qin Mu across several imperial tombs, and they finally saw the dragon Qilin. The dragon Qilin was currently forming brothership with a bunch of dragons and Qilin, bragging as hard as he could. I reared a human who specially refines spirit pills for me. Those dragon kings and Qilins were all full of envy. The dragon Qilin was about to say more when he saw Qin Mu and the rest walking over. He immediately stopped. Celestial Venerable Yu called the dragon Qilin over, and when the dragon Qilin saw how bad of shape Qin Mu was in, he was shocked and hurriedly said, let me carry Cult Master. I can walk steadily, and not let Cult Master feel any bumps. Celestial Venerable Yu carried Qin Mu up the dragon Qilin's back, and the dragon Qilin sneaked a glance at Qin Mu. His face was dark, and this made him uneasy. I wonder if Cult Master heard what I said just now. Those dragon kings and the Qilins looked at him enviously as he carried Qin Mu out. When they were finally far away, only then did they say, young and promising, truly young and promising. Even though Long Pai is young, his horizons and knowledge are extraordinary. To rear a human to make pills for me, Why did I not think of such an idea in my early years? The dragon Qin carried Qin Mu out of the underground space, and they came to the hall of the dilapidated temple. The phoenix also followed them. They looked around. Gongsun Yang hurried off to tidy up the room. She said, I usually stay in this temple, and I only tidied up a few rooms. Let me prepare another few for Sister Phoenix and Brother Qin. The phoenix took out a brilliant gold nest and said, I'm not used to sleeping in other people's bed, lay out my nest. Gongsun Yang nodded and took the bird's nest. Not long later, she finished tidying up. Qin Mu sat beside the bed, and his complexion was much better than before. Sister, I'm much better, you don't have to take care of me anymore. This fruit from Mother Earth is indeed not bad. I can feel my vital qi recovering. There's not much of a problem now. Gongsun Yang examined him, and she saw that his complexion was indeed much better. She was very envious. This fruit is extraordinary. It's a fruit from the primordial tree. It's called the Earth Aeon Dao fruit. The primordial tree is the root of heaven and earth in Yuanju, absorbing the spirit energy and spirit influence of heaven and earth and adding Mother Earth's own cultivation. This fruit is rare to come by. I've heard Mother Earth say that she rarely gives Earth Aeon Dao fruit to other people. She only plucked some during the first year of Dragon Han to give to Celestial Emperor for treating the ancient gods to the banquet. When the Dragon Han Celestial Heavens was established, there weren't many gods that had the right to eat the Earth Aeon Dao fruit. Qin Mu turned back his head, and the halo also turned with him. It always being at the back of his head made him feel kind of uneasy. The Earth Aeon Dao fruit was located in the halo formed by Mother Earth's blessing. It was shriveled up, but the power inside was simply astonishing. He could just bite it with one mouth to taste it. However, it wasn't the fruit that was making him uneasy, it was Mother Earth's blessing. He had seen most of the 7 celestial venerables, and behind their heads, they all had a halo, and that was the blessing of ancient gods. The blessings of the ancient gods had all kinds of effects like longevity, prosperity, the ability to prevent aging, and undying, among others. However, Celestial Venerable Yu, who had received all of the ancient gods' blessings, was still assassinated, and his soul was destroyed. It was only a million years later that Qin Mu had revived him. Furthermore, he had lost his memory and seemed silly. This showed that even the blessings couldn't ensure one's safety. This halo that I was blessed with seems more like a surveillance camera. Even if I escape, Mother Earth can still track me through this halo. I wonder if I can get rid of this halo. His spirit was lacking vigor, and he yawned. Gongsun Yang hurriedly got up and said, Brother Qin, please take a rest first. She hurriedly left the room and closed the door. Qin Mu instantly stood up, and he was full of vigor. His exhaustion from earlier couldn't be seen at all. He executed his creation technique, and transformed into a 3-headed and 6-armed form. With 3 heads, the light couldn't reach the back of his head. He examined the light carefully, and there were all kinds of extremely exquisite runes flowing inside the light. This halo was formed by runes, and these runes were in their finest particle form. Qin Mu examined it and frowned. Other than magnetism runes, there were also other kinds of runes. This was much more complicated than he had imagined. It was fine if it were just magnetism runes. Granny Sai had just deduced all of the more than 1,900 magnetism runes. If the halo was constructed by runes that could form magnetism divine arts, he could still think of a way to solve it. Yet the other runes in the light halo made it tricky for Qin Mu. These runes showed the lines and structures of the rivers, seas, lakes, and pools. Some had the shape of grass, trees, and flowers, and some even had profound lines that he didn't know what they were used for. It was obvious that the great Tao that Mother Earth possessed was extremely complicated. And the light was a completed divine art formed by the shape of these runes. In regards to how to escape Mother Earth's tracking and sense, Qin Mu completely had no idea. That's right, heavenly teacher Zishi. His eyes lit up. As scholar among the 4 great heavenly teachers, she might not be as erudite as Saint Woodcutter, but her cultivation was countless times higher than his. Maybe she would have a method to solve the halo. Thinking until here, he stretched his hand to grab at the floating fruit, and when he grabbed the fruit, he encountered a problem when trying to pull the fruit out from the halo. When he tried to pull the fruit out, countless rays would appear around the halo, and they were like fine lines that connected with the Dao fruit. Just moving it slightly made him encounter unimaginable obstruction. Other people force people to buy and sell items, while Mother Earth just forces her blessing and forces the Earth Aeon Dao fruit on me. I can't even reject it. The fury in Qin Mu's heart was hard to quell. It was like the Dao fruit and halo were embedded behind him, and he couldn't break out of it. To other people, the blessing of Mother Earth and the Earth Aeon Dao fruit were treasures they could only dream of, yet to Qin Mu, they were burdens and dangers. He couldn't wait to throw them far away. Waves of energy kept flowing into his divine treasures from the Earth Aeon Dao fruit, and were absorbed by his primordial spirit. They were then stuffed into the divine treasures to strengthen the 6 directions land, making the land wider and deeper. The Earth Aeon Dao fruit's benefits are still astonishing, but it's a pity that Mother Earth's consciousness is most likely inside. She can detect my location. Qin Mu saw that he couldn't take out the fruit, so he could only give up. I just need to absorb the energy inside the fruit, wouldn't I then be able to break free from the supervision? He continued to absorb the energy from the Dao fruit according to the circulation of the Overlord Body 3 elixir technique, transforming it into pure magic power. The Overlord Body 3 elixir technique could also nourish his primordial spirit, his corporeal body, and strengthen his great divine treasure. His cultivation and magic power rose like the tide, and if he continued to cultivate at this speed, he would have enough magic power to break the barrier of the life and death divine treasure. The Builder Tree innate divine bridge in my 6-direction land is actually absorbing the energy of the Dao fruit. It's even faster than my Overlord Body 3 elixir technique. Qin Mu was endlessly astonished. The Builder Tree innate divine bridge was Xu Xinghua's idea, and it was both of them who had perfected it. This Builder Tree was a different approach, which resulted in equally similar marvel, as the divine tree that was standing in the center of the primordial realm. And now, the Builder Tree was absorbing the energy of the Dao fruit furiously to grow. Qin Mu was stunned. The Builder Tree rooted in the 6 directions land, this site looked very similar to the ancient primordial realm. The primordial realm also had a divine tree rooted in the center of heaven and earth. Xu Xinghua is no doubt the existence that is just inferior to me. This Builder Tree innate divine bridge is secretly so compatible with the great Tao of heaven and earth, remarkable. Qin Mu exclaimed in admiration, he truly lives up to the reputation of the pseudo-overlord body. If the Builder Tree innate divine bridge manages to absorb the energy, I can definitely digest this Dao fruit even faster, and let Mother Earth have one less method to supervise me. However, he realized he was still too young. Even though there was a lot of energy pouring over from the fruit, he was still trying to digest it. The Builder Tree was also becoming more and more realistic, however, he saw no signs of the power in the fruit lessening. The energy he had exhausted over this period of time wasn't even 1,000th of the energy in the Earth Aeon Dao fruit, not even 1,000,000th or 1,000,000,000th. Mother Earth sure is gracious. Qin Mu's head was aching endlessly. He pushed open the door to walk out, and at the door, the dragon Qilin was lying on the wall with his legs spread apart. He sat on his butt and did a weird cultivation pose. When he saw Qin Mu up, the dragon Qilin hurriedly climbed up and asked, "Cult Master, is it time for food?" "Yep." Qin Mu took out the spirit pills and poured him a full basin. He said heedlessly, "Fatty dragon, how's the progress of the human rearing scripture?" The dragon Qin lowered his head to eat and said, "The 6th chapter of the 2nd volume isn't done yet." He suddenly came to a realization, and his blood ran cold. Qin Mu sneered. "You're writing too slowly." The dragon Qin tucked his tail between his legs and didn't dare to talk anymore. Qin Mu sneered repeatedly, and the dragon Qin sweated buckets. Right at this moment, Gongsun Yang and Celestial Venerable Yu came back from the back of the temple, and she was holding a tray of fruits. When she saw Qin Mu walking out of the room, she said in delight, "Brother Qin, I've plucked some fruits for you to eat. I've grown all of them myself, they are very fresh." Qin Mu hurriedly gave his thanks and tried it out. The fruit left a fragrance on his lips, and he praised, "Big sister's fruits are huge and sweet." Gongsun Yang was very happy, and she said, "Brother Lan, send some to Sister Phoenix, let her have a taste too." "No need." On the roof of the hall, the phoenix's voice rang out, and Qin Mu raised his head to look. He saw the phoenix had transformed into a woman wearing bright clothes, and she was looking at Jade Capital City without shifting her gaze. It was as if she was anticipating a great enemy, and she was giving off intense fighting spirit. Qin Mu's heart stirred, and he jumped up onto the roof. The phoenix was displeased and shouted, "Go down. This is not a place you can come." Qin Mu hurriedly said, "I've refined some spirit pills for Big Sister to have a taste, see if it's to your liking. If it isn't, little brother shall change the prescription." The phoenix's expression softened, and she said, "Don't call me Big Sister and make us seem close and familiar. My name is Feng Chirian, you can just call me Goddess Chirian." She tried one and said, "The fire nature is a little on the heavy side. I'm originally a phoenix that cultivates the great Dao of the sacred fire. Because the fire nature in the spirit pills is too low quality, it doesn't suit my taste. Go down first, this is not where you should be. Put the matter regarding the spirit pills aside first, Mother Earth's matter is important, just cultivate." Qin Mu said with a smile, "Sister Chirian, I usually don't need to cultivate in seclusion. I'm used to running east and west, so I'm always cultivating on the move. When I fight, my cultivation speed would instead be faster." "What is Sister Chirian looking at?" Feng Chirian saw that he still called her sister and frowned slightly. However, she let him do as he pleased. "You cultivate faster when fighting." Qin Mu nodded. "In that case, I'll bring you to fight." Feng Chirian said, "Yang, you guys stay here, I'll bring him to the capital city to fight." Gongsun Yang hurriedly said, "How is this okay? Brother Qin was just heavily injured, how can you bring him to fight? What if something happens to him, you can't answer to Mother Earth." The phoenix on the roof seemed irritated and uneasy as she paced back and forth. Qin Mu was bewildered and asked, "Sister Chirian, do you have anything on your mind?" Feng Chirian didn't reply. She stopped in her footsteps and continued to stare at Jade Capital City. Gongsun Yang said, "Brother Qin, come down to eat some fruits, there is still a lot." Qin Mu could only jump down from the roof and fill his stomach with fruits. When the fruits in the tray were finished, Gongsun Yang still wanted to pluck more from the back garden. Qin Mu said with a smile, "Sister Yang, I'm already full." "That's right, what's this small sapling behind your head?" He stretched out his hand and touched the small sapling in the halo behind Gongsun Yang's head. Gongsun Yang gave a soft moan, and her face blushed. She lowered her voice and said bashfully, "Don't touch. You can't touch it." Qin Mu was puzzled. "Why can't I touch it?" Gongsun Yang's face turned even redder, and she didn't dare speak. "Idiot." Feng Chirian jumped down from the roof and sneered. "That's Yang's primordial spirit. Why are you touching her primordial spirit? It's too stimulating for her, you might as well touch her body directly." Her primordial spirit is very weak, and she was originally only a small sapling grown from the core of an Earth Aeon Dao fruit. Mother Earth got me to water her with the water of heavenly yin, and only then was her intelligence born. However, what's the core of the fruit without the pulp? Her primordial spirit has no nutrients to absorb, and so she's very weak. Qin Mu's face flushed and he muttered, "Sister Yang used your primordial spirit to save me. I have nothing to give in return. Give her your hand in marriage then." Feng Qian seemed to be very hot-tempered, as she paced back and forth. Qin Mu's eyes lit up. "I wonder if the Earth Aeon Dao fruit can help Big Sister. Can I use the energy inside the Earth Aeon Dao fruit to strengthen Big Sister's primordial spirit?" Gongsun Yang hurriedly rejected him. "How can this do? The Dao fruit was given to you by Mother Earth for you to cultivate to the life and death realm. Qin Mu said with a smile, "The energy inside the Dao fruit is too much. It's easy to cultivate to the life and death realm, and I can't finish it." He held Gongsun Yang's hand and tried to guide some energy in the Dao fruit to her. Gongsun Yang had planned to reject it, but when the energy of the fruit came surging over, she instantly felt an incomparably comfortable sensation. It was as if she had returned back to the womb, back inside the core of the fruit, which was extremely comfortable. The small sapling behind her slowly parted, and two tender leaves shook gently. "No." Feng Qian was suddenly jumping in fury, and phoenix flames covered her entire body. "I need to find that little bitch, and teach her a lesson." Qin Mu was stunned and asked, "Who is Sister Qian talking about?" "Qi Xiaoyu." Feng Qian couldn't hide her anger, as she ground her teeth against one another. That little slut betrayed the phoenix race. "Come, follow me to Jade Capital City. I'll beat the little bitch to death." This video will end here.